Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschata Deshatarine Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasadi Shivaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. So we are in the unit 11 of the Bhakti Vaibhava course, and the chapter today, chapter 15, the last section of chapter 15, verses 39 to 50. And between the verses 39 to 41, 39, 40, 41, descriptions of the Lord's beauty in these three verses. We started with 31, we touched on text 40. So now we will go back again with text 40 and carry on from there. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye. Nasta Prayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. Bhagavati Utamashtoke Bhakti Bhavati Naishtiki. Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Text 40. Pitam Sukhe Pritu Nitam Bhini Viprusantya Kanchali Bhivritaya Vanamalayach Valgu Prakoshta Valayam Vinata Sutangse Vinyashtahashtam Itarena Dhunanam Abjam. He was adorned with a girdle that shone brightly on the yellow cloth covering his large hips, and he wore a garland of fresh flowers, which was distinguished by humming bees. His loving wrists were graced with bracelets, and he rested one of his hands on the shoulder of Garuda, his carrier, and twirled a lotus with another hand. So this is the second impression, the first verse, 39, having explained the Lord's general appearance. Now look carefully. I will go back to 39. 39 was a general feeling of the sages and the appreciation of his auspiciousness and his very pleasurable mood. And they already had seen his face, because whenever you see someone, you see their face. So we read 39 and you make the distinction. So the Lord in 39, the Lord is a reservoir of all pleasure. So that was their very first impression. The Lord is a reservoir of all pleasure. His auspicious presence is meant for everyone's benediction. Why? Why it is said like that? Because they're hoping also to get benedictions, the sages. Because they know that they may have overstepped a little bit here. They're counting on his affection. And his affectionate smiling and glancing touch the core of their heart. The Lord's beautiful bodily color is blackish, and his broad chest is the resting place of the goddess of fortune. So here is described as being blackish. You see? Shame. Shama. And his broad chest is a resting place of the goddess of fortune, who glorifies the entire spiritual world, the summit of all heavenly planets. Thus it appeared that the Lord was personally spreading the beauty and good fortune of the spiritual world. So they had experienced a little bit at the gate of Vaikuntha atmosphere. And now they're looking at the Lord, they're taking the darshan, and that's what they say. It looks like, he is the one who is spreading all the auspiciousness, all the glories, all the beauty, all the good fortune, and all the auspiciousness that there is in the spiritual world. So text 40, carry on with the same. power. But now it gets a little bit more detailed on the person of the Lord. So he says, he was adorned with a girdle and some that shone brightly on the yellow cloth covering his large hips. And he wore a garland of fresh flowers, which was distinguished by hummingbees. His lovely wrists were graced with bracelets, and he rested one of his hands on the shoulder of Garuda, his carrier, and twirled a lotus with another hand. Now, Garuda is not his friend. Garuda is his servant. Generally, you put your hand on the shoulder of a friend, not on the shoulder of a servant. So why is the Lord's hand on the shoulder of Garuda, his friend? So because he's coming in a hurry to de-escalate the situation of, or not to let everything just escalate, the small mishap between the four Kumaras and these two doorkeepers. So he's walking back with Lakshmi Devi, and Garuda, as a servant, he will actually go forward to try to resolve issues. So actually, by his hand being on Garuda, he's kind of saying, Garuda, just wait, let me handle this. That's what it is actually. He's saying to Garuda, let me handle this. Let me handle this. So he's walking, the Lord is coming walking, right? And while he's walking, the tulasi offered on his toe mixed with chandan, mixed with sandalwood, right? And you will see that is described in the text 43. So let's carry on. We'll give you a nice idea of how things are here. But another point we notice, the hummingbees are there. The hummingbees are actually devotees of the Lord. And they were devotees either Nitya Bhadra Jeev who's gone back home, or Jivan Mukta, Nitya Mukta, Nitya Siddha Jeevs who are in the spiritual world. So they made everything so much more attractive and fresh and lively. Okay, so this full description of in the purport, it is said, full description of the personality of Godhead as experienced by the sages is being described. The Lord's personal body was covered with yellow robes. The Lord is always wearing yellow robes. And his waist was thin. In Vaikuntha, whenever there's a flower garland on the chest of the personality of Godhead, or any one of his associates, it is described that the hummingbees are there. All these features are very beautiful and attractive for the devotees. One of the Lord's hands rested on his carrier, Garuda, and in another hand, he twirled the lotus flower. Right? So these are personal characteristics of the personality of Godhead Narayan. So of course, the Lord has four hands. So it's not like the one hand's got the lotus, the other hand, he's just saying to Garuda, just, he didn't mount on Garuda, he walked and he came there. Now can you imagine? Now let's push our imagination a little bit. What would it be like to see a beautiful large bird like Garuda and the Lord walking next to him? Quite an interesting scene. The beauty of it all, the whole devotional bhava, the service mood of Garuda, the affection of the Lord offering to Garuda. So, we have to sometimes run our imagination and think about this. And how beautiful is the Lord with a huge, beautiful bird, powerful bird next to him as his carrier. And his choice, Garuda is an eternal servant of the Lord, but being an eagle, Garuda is an eagle. Just remember, he's not just a Garuda, but he's an eagle. He's a master of all eagles, and he's a powerful bird. And the other thing about Garuda, he is not vegetarian, just remind you. He's not vegetarian because he eats, things. So, because he is a bird, and so on. So even then, we cannot offend Garuda. We can be in deep trouble because he's an associate of the Lord. So let's read text 41. Text 41.
Prabhu,
Yes.
Krishna. Yes, I was wondering if the Lord travels with Garuda, and any time he wants to go something. But at this time, where he's walking, what is the essence of Garuda being beside him?
Yeah, because he was close by. He came together with Lakshmi. These are descriptions that are just you have to take it on face value. And he wanted to come there quickly, and maybe, I don't know. These answers to these questions will be much more speculations. So you have to read through and appreciate the scenery for what it is. And only when there are philosophical questions and queries, then you can wander your mind. Otherwise, we accept them on face value. Okay. So Vidyut Shipam Makara Kundala Mandararha Gandhastalon Nasamukham Manivat Kiritam Dordanda Shanda Vivare Harata Pavardhya Harena Kandaragaten Chakoshtubena. His countenance was distinguished by cheeks and enhanced the beauty of his alligator-shaped pendants, which outshone lightning. His nose was prominent, and his head was covered with gem-studded crown. A charming necklace hung between his stout arms, and his neck was adorned with a gem known as by the name of Kaustuba. So the beauty of his alligator-shaped pendants. So this Makara Kundala, Makara is like it's an animal that doesn't exist anymore. Makara is not fish, Makara is not an alligator. Makara is a combination of the two. And the description is a Makara Kundala. It's not a shark, it's not an alligator, but it is more or less like an alligator shark or something like that. So this Makara Kundala, and which outshone lightning. This is also his trademark. The Lord is always wearing this earring, which is Makara Kundala. Okay. Charming necklace around his stout arms, generally adorned with pearls. And he has a Kaustuba money, a gem that has brilliance, like incredible brilliance, like when you see in a kaleidoscope, millions and millions of beautiful colored rays coming out of the Kaustuba money. So text 41 end up describing the beautiful form of the Lord. Right? Now 42. The exquisite beauty of Narayan being many times magnified by the intelligence of his devotees. So the exquisite beauty of Narayan being many times magnified by the intelligence of his devotees. So when the Lord is surrounded by intelligent devotees who do intelligent arrangement, intelligent service, intelligent discussions, then the beauty of the Lord is enhanced. Just like the beauty of the Krishna consciousness movement is enhanced by having wonderful devotees who do first-class kirtan, who do first-class philosophy, and who do first-class deity worship, and they use all their intelligence to serve the Lord. So the exquisite beauty of Narayan, so it's very complementary to think about what he said here. It was many times magnified by the intelligence of the devotees, was so attractive that it defeated the pride of the goddess of fortune in being the most beautiful. So actually, who is more beautiful, Lord Narayan or Lakshmi Devi?
Narayan, Lord Narayan.
Lord Narayan is more beautiful, and this is what he said here. And the Lord Narayan, he defeated the pride of the goddess of fortune in being the most beautiful. Because he is the source of all beauty.
Yes.
My dear demigods. So sometimes the question is asked, but who is more beautiful, Srimati Radharani or Krishna? Prabhupada answers this question very diplomatically. Very diplomatically. He doesn't say one or the other. He says the devotee is very much like the beauty of Srimati Radharani. But didn't answer. You see, the devotees are very much appreciative of Radharani's beauty and they're always wondering. But that doesn't really answer the question. But then how can you? So it's hard to say because Krishna is attracted by the character and the beauty of Srimati Radhika, but Krishna is the source of all beauty. So then how do you answer the question, who is more beautiful? So better just keep quiet. Okay? So, my dear demigods, the Lord who thus manifested himself, my dear demigods, the Lord who thus manifested himself is worshipable by me, by Lord Shiva, and by all of you. So the sages regarded him with unsated eyes and joyously bowed their heads to their lotus feet. So the Brahma is describing this to the demigods. He said, the Lord who thus manifested himself is worshipped by me, by Lord Shiva, and by all of you. So this is Lord Vaikuntanath, Lord Vishnu of Lord Vaikuntha, and he is worshipped by Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva and by all the devatas. The sages regarded him with unsated eyes and joyously bowed their heads at the lotus feet. So then the sages saw that what was happening, the beautiful Lord, the description here that is given. Then he's actually, the sages are actually satisfied in their heart to see the Lord. Yes, what is the question, Prabhu? Sarika?
Yes, Prabhuji. There is something, I don't want us to go too far from the question of Garuda. I had that kind of a question sometimes back, and I wanted to see how you want to explain this. What is the role of being a vegetarian in the process of becoming lover of God? Because if Garuda, who is the closest to Lord Vishnu or Krishna, who carries the Lord himself, is not a vegetarian. But one of the principles or rules and regulations we have to follow to become even pure.
Yeah, because we are in the process of sadhana.
Bhakti. Yeah.
You see, so we can't compare to Nitya Siddhas. We are Nitya Badhas. Nitya Badhas have rules, Nitya Siddhas have different engagements. Nitya Badhas, they have to follow rules to embark on the path of Uttama Bhakti. We are on the path of Uttama Bhakti. Uttama Bhakti has 3 stages: Sadhana Bhakti, Bhava Bhakti, and Prema Bhakti. So we are trying to achieve Uttama Bhakti. So we want to come to the platform where we are not involved in any karma and fruitive activities and jnana, anya bilashita sunyam. But Sadhana Bhakti or Vaidhi Bhakti is the first preliminary section. So we have to follow Sadhana Bhakti. Liberated souls, they have a different rules set for them. And they, like the bees humming around the garland. They are bees, and the bees are not required to follow any sadhana bhakti. Or the cranes and the birds that was described, the birds and the cranes that was described in text 18. They have different types of birds and bees, and they're all engaged in offering prayers by the humming and by the cooing and by the crowing and whatever. So they are different living species. Now, if you ask me, is the thing of jivo jivasya jivanam, that is one living entity's food for another, in the spiritual world, then I would say no, because there's no death in the spiritual world. There's no death. So how can jivo jivasya jivanam, one living entity, being food for another in the spiritual world? No. So it's not that one living entity will eat another living entity, because that would mean that there's death. But there's no death in the spiritual world. So how do we, therefore, now, how do we corroborate the idea of Garuda being non-vegetarian? I don't know.
Maybe Garuda is a vegetarian, because Garuda is doing sometimes. You see, in Krishna's pastimes in Dwaraka, as a king, he was found by Narada killing animals just to reduce their overpopulation. And when we see at pastimes in the same time, Krishna in Vrindavan, Garuda has a distance between Kalia, because they were being populated and the snakes are very dangerous. So maybe Garuda is intentionally doing that just to reduce their population of threatening to other people. So maybe that is what I feel, and I think.
Yeah, but then the question down is, Prabhu has raised a very, very intelligent question. So in the spiritual world, because this all you're giving us explanation are happening here in the material world, but in the spiritual world, now what happens?
I don't think in the spiritual world, Garuda is taking flesh over there. I don't think he's eating snake.
Yeah. I think this is more, when it comes to the material world, like Vasuki, when they were doing the churning of the ocean, the snake didn't want to come. He said, why you don't want to do this? He said, look up there. Garuda is there. I'm not going to come. So yeah, these things are there. So it's a different world. And how do we, like there are Vaikuntha couples, and the women are so beautiful, and the men, they have couples and they have consorts and they fly in aeroplanes, but they have no sex life. But they are living conjugal lives, but they have no sex life.
Yes.
So, but that means that there's no birth. There's no birth, no death, no old age. So as we move up, even in the material world, from the lower planetary systems up to the highest planetary systems, there's very, 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 very few, if any, birth in Brahmalok. Yeah. And in the heavenly planets, also very little birth. There's more birth as we go down. Right? So in the spiritual world, there is no birth. So there is no death.
Yeah. It's no sex life. Sometimes I even think about this one, as there's no sex life over there. Sometimes I think far to my own self that then I don't think there's even genital organs in the body in Vaikuntha person, because there's no use of it. You are not going for sex life. You are not going for, let's say, excuse me to say it, for toilet or urine. So maybe that one, nothing like that is of no use.
So you mix the original genderless people? No, I don't think so. They have genders. You're trying to give credibility to the American woke system of gender politics here.
Prabhu. Yeah, Prabhu.
I don't think people get hungry in the Vaikuntha planet. They don't get hungry. So no question of eating fish or...
Everything is done for pleasure. Everything is done for pleasure. Everything done is for enjoying and pleasing the Supreme Lord. So, yeah, it's hard for us to imagine these things. Because you said they have no genital, but then Krishna was urinating over the gopis' altar.
Wow. Yeah, I see.
Yeah, did you get knocked out now?
Yeah, I get that now.
Yeah, so it's very hard to say. So yeah, thank you. So we carry on?
Yeah, okay. Bro, a question is striking in my mind. As to, in the spiritual world, everything is conscious. So even if you are taking fruits, the fruit we are taking is conscious.
Then Shuddha Sattva. And I have also asked us questions many times. So what about eatables and so many things? It's hard for us to understand these things. They're in Shuddha Sattva. All the earth, water, fire, air, ether things we have here, they're there, but they're in Shuddha Sattva. So they're not mixed with modes. So do they have a beginning and an end? I've not been able to answer that question.
Prabhu, please, one more thing. Why is it that in the book, in the description of Krishna's color, as here in text 39 formally, it is stated that he's blackish, But why is it that in the Bhagavatam's BBT books, why is it that they always paint him, they always give him a blue color? Why is it that?
Because sometimes because at times he's described as being blue, like a Saroja, like a blue lotus. And at times he is described as being Meghashyam, the color of the monsoon cloud. And bright, as if at the back of the monsoon cloud, there is a lightning.
Okay.
So the exact color, like we discussed this yesterday, these are things that will stay a mystery, I feel. Of course, I'm studying about Sandarbha more detailed, and maybe in the Sandarbhas I will discover some things, but I don't know. But you can ask the more senior Vaishnavas.
Okay. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So let's carry on with 43 now. 43. So basically, the beauty of the Lord is described, and here Srila Prabhupada in the purport, he talks about the beauty of the Lord as enchanting, and so on. So let's read the purport. It's very beautiful. The beauty of the Lord was so enchanting that it could not be sufficiently described. The goddess of fortune is supposed to be the most beautiful sight within the spiritual and material creations of the Lord. She has a sense of being the most beautiful. This is the answer. She has a sense of being the most beautiful. She has a sense of being the most beautiful. But yet her beauty defeated when the Lord appeared. Why she has a sense of more beautiful? Because the Lord may be attracted to her. So Radharani has a sense of being the most beautiful, because in the same way, because that the Lord, Krishna, is attracted to her. So that's why Prabhupada, you can't answer the question definitively. In other words, the beauty of the goddess of fortune is secondary in the presence of the Lord. Right? So if you extrapolate that, so the beauty of Radharani is secondary to the beauty of Lord Krishna, but because Lord Krishna is attracted, she has a sense that her beauty is the highest. So the beauty of the goddess of fortune is secondary in the presence of the Lord. In the words of Vaishnava poets, it is said that the Lord's beauty is so enchanting that it defeats hundreds of thousands of cupids. He is therefore called Madan Mohan. It is also described that the Lord sometimes becomes mad after the beauty of Radharani. Poets describe that under those circumstances, although Lord Krishna is Madan Mohan, he becomes Madan Daha, or enchanted by the beauty of Radharani. So he gets defeated by the Cupid coming out of the beauty of Radharani. So actually the Lord's beauty is super excellent, surpassing even the beauty of Lakshmi in Vaikuntha. Right? You see how cleverly Srila Prabhupada didn't say, you see, he listened to this carefully. He said, actually the Lord's beauty is super excellent, right? Surpassing even the beauty of Lakshmi in Vaikuntha.
Yes.
But didn't mention Radharani, did it? So actually the Lord's beauty is super excellent, surpassing even the beauty of Lakshmi in Vaikuntha. But there's one line before, he's talking about Lord Krishna being Madan Mohan, right? He's enchanter. He's enchanter of millions of Cupid. And then he is Madan Daha, means that he is enchanted by the beauty of Radharani. But then in the next line, when Lord Prabhupada is describing the beauty of the Lord being even more beautiful, but he didn't say Radharani, he said Lakshmi. You follow this?
Yes.
My reasoning?
Yeah.
So he says, actually the Lord's beauty is super excellent, because the first argument was comparing the attractiveness of Srimati Radharani to Krishna, and Madan Mohan being the Cupid who enchants everyone. But he is the beauty of Madan Mohan, cannot even enchant Krishna. But then Lord Krishna is enchanted, his Madan Daha, by beauty of Radharani. So then you would think that he would say the Lord beauty is super excellent, surpassing even the beauty of Radharani, but he didn't. He said Lakshmi in Vaikuntha. You see how smart?
Yes.
This is Siddhanta.
Very,
Very, very beautiful point, but very Siddhantic. The devotees of the Lord in Vaikuntha planet want to see the Lord as most beautiful. That's the point. Listen to this carefully if you have an argument on this. So he said the devotees of the Lord in Vaikuntha want to see the Lord as most beautiful. But the devotees in Gokul or Krishna Loka, they want to see Radharani as more beautiful than Krishna. They want to see. So she has a sense that maybe I am more beautiful than Krishna. But Krishna, I don't want to say anymore. So the adjustment is that the Lord being Bhakta Vatsala, or one who wants to please his devotees, assumes such features. So the word you have to note there, I go back one line, the devotees of the Lord in Vaikuntha planet want to see the Lord as most beautiful because he is their leader. He is their Lord. And similarly, the devotees and in Gokul, in Krishna Lok, the devotees want to see Radharani as most beautiful than Krishna. Want to see. The word is want to see. The adjustment is that Lord, being Bhakta Vatsala, or one who wants to please his devotees, assumes such features. So please take a note that if you ever want to discuss about this point of Lakshmi's beauties in comparison to Lakshmi Devi, Lord Vishnu, or Radharani's beauty in relationship to Cupid, and Cupid in relationship to Krishna, and Krishna in relationship to Radharani, then the verse to go to is 3:15:42. Get it, Shalika? Okay, that's a verse to go to. And Prabhupada has used a very beautiful choice of words in it. Okay, so
Yes.
the adjustment is that the Lord being Bhakta Vatsala, so it's clear. You see, you have this reference, then you can answer all the questions. It is just the very nice choice of words, the sense of the devotees and what the devotees want to see and what is a reality. So the reality is very much compromised in the heart of the devotees and in the heart of Krishna and Srimati Radharani. So it's like very hard to make a definitive answer. So it's a question of sense of whose beauty is more, and also what the devotees want to see. Like in Vrindavan. In Vrindavan, once Dinabandhu Prabhu came to Mauritius and he was looking at Radha Golokananda and he said, here Golokananda is really, really most beautiful. But in Vrindavan, Kishori, Radharani, it's most beautiful. So there she is more beautiful and here Krishna is more beautiful. So can you actually equate the two? Like he said that in Mauritius, Golokananda is more beautiful. And in Vrindavan, Radharani is most beautiful. So what can you equate from this? You cannot say anything. You know what I'm saying? So this is a very nice way of looking at this here, because we want to see Radharani as being so beautiful. But we know also Krishna being the source of all beauty. So the adjustment, Prabhupada, look at the word, the choice of word. This is a Gaudiya Vaishnava of the topmost caliber answering. He said the adjustment is that the Lord being Bhakta Vatsala, or one who wants to please his devotees, assumes such features so that devotees like Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and other devotees may be pleased. That's why he assumes these features, because he's Bhakta Vatsala. He wants to make sure that we don't go astray. We don't go here and there. because he's our Lord, and he wants to make sure that our center of attraction is not compromised, and he's our center of attraction. Because he's Bhaktavatsala, he cares for us. So Lord Shiva and other demigods may be pleased. So here also, for the devotee sages, here also, now let's look at the angle of the devotee sages, the Char Kumaras. The Lord appeared in his most beautiful feature, right? The Lord appeared in his most beautiful feature. So that means that the Lord is beautiful. He can be more beautiful. He can be most beautiful. And when he is the most beautiful, then again, he can be more than most beautiful, and he can be more than the more. So he goes on. So here it's saying that the Lord appeared in his most beautiful feature, and they continued to see him without cessation and wanted to continue seeing him more and more. That is a sentiment of the sages, right? But something has happened here. So that was a description by Lord Brahma. And now he says, this is a verse that you have to remember by heart. Please note, this is a verse that you have to remember by heart. Text 43. Okay. Tasyaravinda nayanasya padaravinda kinjalka mishra tulasi makaranda vayu antargata savivarena chakaratesham shakshobham aksharam jusham apichita tanvo. What is that? Tasyaravinda nayanasya padaravinda. When the breeze carrying the aroma of tulasi leaves from the toes of the lotus feet of the personality of Godhead entered the nostril of those sages. This is the quality of Lord Vishnu entering the nostrils of the sages who are generally situated in Brahman with an inclination for bhakti, into Shantaras, more or less. Now, the perfume, the breeze carrying the aroma, the perfume of the tulasi leaves, right, has entered the nostrils of the sages. What happens then? Anyone can say? Antargata sovivarena chakaratesham shakshobham aksharam jusham apichita tanvo. They had a change in consciousness. They had an absolute change in consciousness. They experienced a change both in body and in mind, even though they were attached to the impersonal Brahman understanding. So they were Brahma Gyanis, they were Jnana devotees, right? They were more attached to the impersonal understanding of the Supreme Lord. But this quality of fragrance mixed, not tulasi, just tulasi. It is said, kinjalka, the word in the second line is kinjalka mishra tulasi. Mishra means mixed. So kinjalka mishra, saffron mixed with tulasi. But even before that, tasyaravinda nayanasya padaravinda. So it is padaravinda kinjalka mishra tulasi. So the fragrance of the item offered mixed with saffron, the tulasi mixed with saffron offered to the lotus toe of Lord Vishnu. The fragrance is enhanced by the fragrance of the toe of Lord Vishnu as well. So it says padaravinda, you have a hyphen, kinjalka, which is saffron, mishra, mixed with tulasi. So padaravinda, kinjalka, mishra, tulasi, and the breeze, makaranda vayu, the breeze, vayu, entered their nostrils. What happened? Antargata, inside. They had a transformation of mind, a transformation of heart, a transformation of body. Antargata savivarena chakaratesham shakshobham aksharam. Aksharam, Jusham means that they were in Brahman realization. And apichita tanvo, they had a transformation. So this is a transformation of the four Kumaras. This is the transformation of the four Kumaras. So by by getting the smell, the fragrance of the toe, the tulasi and everything, the whole, because remember, everything is coming from the Supreme Lord, then that quality actually changed. So this is also given in respect to the Atmarama verse. The Atmarama verse in Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto. Atmaramas Jamunnayor Nirganta Biurukume Kurvantim Ahitukim Bhaktim Itambuto Guno Hari. Even the Atmaramas, and here these devotees are Atmaramas, the Jnana Bhaktas, they are Atmaramas, the four Kumaras, they are completely satisfied in their heart. But when they come in contact with the qualities, Itam Bhuto Guno Hari, when they come in contact with the qualities of the Lord, because in Brahman, there's no quality. And someone can be satisfied just being on the Brahman realized platform as being Atma and being Brahman and being fully blissful and having no tinges of material modes of nature. But still, the fragrance actually disturbed their mind. The fragrance disturbed their mind. So this verse is very important, that even Brahmagyanis, when they see the beauty of the Lord, they hear the voice of the Lord, or they see the paraphernalia of the Lord, or they smell the fragrance from the Lord, or anything connected with the Lord, their Brahmagyan, their Brahma realization will be disturbed, because those qualities of the Lord are higher in nature. So this verse you have to remember. So it appears from this verse that the four Kumaras were impersonalists, the protagonists of the philosophy of monism, becoming one with the Lord. But as soon as they saw the Lord's features, their minds changed. In other words, the impersonalist who feel transcendental pleasure in striving to become one with the Lord is defeated when he sees the beautiful transcendental features of the Lord because of the fragrance of his lotus feet. You follow what I'm saying? It is not just a fragrance of tulasi, it is a fragrance of his lotus feet, mixed with the fragrance of saffron, mixed with the fragrance of tulasi. Padara vinda kinjalka mishra tulasi makaranda vayu. Right? Carried by the air and mixed with the aroma of tulasi, their minds changed. So the Lord has a beautiful smell, a beautiful fragrance. Instead of becoming one with the Supreme, they thought it was, let me become his devotee. So becoming a servitor of the Lord's lotus feet is better than becoming one with the Lord. Okay.
Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes.
Krishna. I have a question, Prabhu.
Yeah, I'm anticipating it. Go on.
Yeah, Prabhu, please. My question is two. First, is impersonalism and voidism not the same? And then the second question is, how is it that the four Kumaras were impersonalists, that they were able to have darshan of a full personal feature of the Supreme Lord?
Second part of the question I was anticipating. So the first part of the question is, voidism and impersonalism the same? If you look at Prabhupada's pranam mantra, Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavad, these two words. Nirvishesha and Sunyavad. Sunyavad is voidism. Nirvishesha is impersonalism. Voidism is more like everything becomes zero. Nirvishesha means everything becomes Brahman. There's a slight difference. Right? Void means everything is starts with zero, goes back to zero. Impersonalism means it starts with impersonal feature, manifest into different world, and the Lord is Brahma Satyam Jagat Mithya, the world is false, and then it goes back to impersonalism, which is pure spiritual substance. So in essence, there is a small difference. But you can also claim the voidism to be Brahman. That's why I'm saying this. There may be a small difference. Voidism to be Brahman without any personal, without any feature or any quality. So therefore there's no quality, so it's void. But it is just a pure spiritual substance without quality. So that also, so sometimes it incorporates the two. That voidism is like, for example, the atheist, the Buddhist, they follow the philosophy of voidism. So Prabhupada Pranam Mantra is very carefully crafted. Huh? Very carefully presented. It's quite nice, huh? So the second part of your question, how did they end up going there? Because they've been hearing a lot. They had association with Lord Brahma, who's a pure devotee. And they've been hearing about the lotus feet of Lord Vishnu. They've been hearing about him. So they were Brahman, which means that they had no influence of gunas, right? But because they've been hearing about and associating with their father, they had an inclination towards that. That's why they came all the way up to the door of Vaikuntha. Not in Vaikuntha, more or less we can say that. All the way up to the door of Vaikuntha. And then to complete their transformation, Lord Vishnu sent the fragrance of their toe. So then it's quite interesting, isn't it? Yeah? And then Lord Vishnu sent, so Vishnu sent, the fragrance of their toe to make the transformation complete.
So it boils down to the fact that Bhakti starts with.
Let me first finish. So do you understand this, Kamalaksha?
Yes, Prabhu.
Right. Yes. So they had a lot of association with Lord Brahma. They had been hearing about the Lord, and they wanted to. They had eagerness to see him. That's why they're children, so they can walk in. So they had eagerness to see him. So they just said, let's just go to Vaikuntha. So they just walked in, and their desire was to see their Lord. So having so much desire to see the Lord, right, was in itself devotional service, in a sense. And the Lord helped them because they were so dear to the Lord, because they were such great sages with so much knowledge, and they were transforming the world by their preaching. And now, after hearing and associating with Lord Brahma and so on, he wanted to go there. So it's like borderline, isn't it?
Yes.
Let's analyze this, not jump. It's like borderline, right?
Yes.
So let's see. What is a verse in Bhagavad Gita that actually explains the transformation of the Jnani to the devotee? Anyone remembers?
Brahma Bhuta?
No. Not right.
Jnani to a devotee. Bahunam Jamana Ante.
Yes. Let us see this verse. Bahunam Janmana Mante Jnanavan Mam Prapadyate Vasudevam Sarvamiti Samahatma Sudurlava. So I think it's 14. Yeah, it is 14.
719.
No. 19, no? 19.
Yes, 19.
16, 17, 18, 19. So 19 says, Bahunam Janmanamante, after many, many births, you actually in knowledge. What knowledge? Knowledge of Brahman, knowledge of the difference between Purusha, Prakriti, and so on and so forth. He has that full knowledge, but not inclined to Bhakti yet. But when he knows me to be the cause of all causes. So isn't that what happened to them? They were knowing that actually maybe Lord Vishnu is the cause of all causes. We want to go and see him. They were excited. They walked into Vaikuntha. Right? Such a great soul is very rare.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Give me a minute, Prabhu. Just wait. Yeah, I'm looking at it, whether Prabhupada mentioned that in the purport. No. Okay, go on. Yes, I hope this is clear. So it's not that they were fully impersonalist. They were Shanta Bhaktas because they had already, because this is what happened to Shanta Bhakta. Shanta Bhakta means appreciate the spirituality and the grandeur and the greatness of the Lord. But I don't know about the grandeur and the greatness and the exquisiteness of the Lord, but I know he is. I'm attracted to generally in the general sense, but I don't have any appreciation of each individual quality of the Lord to serve him. This is Shanta. Shanta. So, but then the quality of the Lord hits you through your senses. Then you think, wow, never experienced anything like this. So far, my experience was fantastic, but this is more than fantastic. And that what has been, we've been reading is been described in text 39, 40, 41, and 42. And then 43 describes actually the transformation of the Santa Bhaktas here. Okay?
One way and the other, can we conclude that the Santa Bhakta is far higher than even the greatest of the impersonalists?
Yeah, because they have appreciation for the greatness and the quality of the Lord. Because the impersonalists, they think that the Supreme Absolute Truth is Brahman. The Shanta Bhaktas appreciate the greatness and the quality of the Lord without going into the specifics of his greatness. Okay? Okay. So text 14.
Yes,
14.
Before you go forward, I know my divine Prabhu also wanted to say something, but in relation to the explanation you just given, my mind was just going back to the nitty-gritty or the basis of becoming a devotee, that actually devotional service starts by Sadhu Sangha, because you were explaining that by their hearing from Brahma, so they develop attraction. So in other words, it means that we can actually not become a devotee unless we hear.
Yes.
Consciously hear about the Lord.
Takshinu, yes. 7:1. Maya Shaktamana Partha Yoga Yunja Samagata. Takshinu, hear. We have to hear. And by hearing, if you're just reading the Shastra, the word's not going to jump at you. But they're going to jump at you when you're hearing Shastra from a devotee. It's quite interesting. Then you have the Shraddha, then you have the faith, that kind of faith. So the Shraddha comes from the association with the devotees of the Lord who are attracted to a particular quality of the Lord. Then you'll get the Shraddha, then you'll get the faith to become devotee.
Yeah, it's interesting. This is a very interesting point, because I was just listening to one lecture earlier this morning while I was on the tap, and I was just remembering in those good days when we were not yet on this part of Bhakti. And there's a beautiful verse in the Bible also, which says that faith comes by hearing the word of God. There's a verse like that in the Bible that says faith comes by hearing the word of God. But then it is interesting that modern day pastors and preachers says that don't hear from any other person, just hear only from me, because they don't want you to hear the devotees. They want to, because they feel that if you hear, then you become free from their clutches. So it's an interesting thing. So I was just reflecting as you're mentioning that now, because it was something that I was hearing from a devotees lecture this morning. It was emphasizing that I was talking about how someone asked a question about how the Abrahmanic religious traditions feel threatened about hearing about Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, and why they don't want to listen to devotees. Well, I'm just sharing that realization. Thank you.
They may not have that realization. You're having that realization because you're analyzing from a higher platform. They probably don't have that realization.
That is true.
Yeah, they don't. Yes, Madhuvan Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. My curiosity is that since the four Kumaras, they've heard directly from the Brahma, who has actually seen Krishna. when they still say they're impersonalists, it gives me some concern because the situation appears as if one has to see the Lord face to face before he can become a personalist. So, you know, like we now, we heard from our spiritual master and we become personalists. We can envision, even though we have not seen Krishna face to face, but we envision him, who he is, and we believe he exists like that. But from this narration now, it's telling us that until the four Kumaras have to see Krishna face to face before they were now transformed from being impersonalists to personalists.
You don't have to. You can hear the, you don't have to. That's just the lila that is there. But that doesn't establish, we have to hear the quality of the Lord. And if you're hearing that about from the pure devotee, or you're hearing the Siddhantic conclusion from the pure devotee, then it is the same. It is the same. It is exactly the same. You don't have to see him face to face, but if a pure devotee is conveying the message of the beauty of the Lord, the quality of the Lord, it has the same effect. It has exactly the same effect. You don't have to personally see the beauty of the Lord, but you can, this real seeing is darshan. That's what darshan means. Darshan means philosophical understanding. Okay. So you understanding, when you take the darshan of the deity, you're not seeing the deity. You actually hoping to obtain the darshan of the deity, which means the right philosophical understanding of my Lord, who are you and who am I and why am I here and how can I get to your lotus feet? That's the meaning of darshan.
Okay.
So,
thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, Prabhu, before we go off this topic, so how will you explain, Dilip, I'm in a class, I'll call you back. Sorry, in the regards to this discussion we're having, Prabhu, so how will you respond to the question that Bhagavad Gita Bhagavatam class should not be given by one who is not realized? Because remember in the beginning days when we joined the devotional service, unless one is a Brahmana, it's not, at least by initiation, he's not allowed to sit on the Vyasasana to speak. But these days,
I'm not sure about that is being applied universally, but because people speak, you can repeat. Prabhupada was talking to in Vrindavan and talking about Saraswati, the small daughter of Malati. And he said, even a child can preach, even if, say, Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then she is saying the absolute truth and she is able to preach. She may not have realization of it. So if you're speaking Siddhantic conclusion, that was Prabhupada's mood. So even in the beginning days, we had no understanding of what we were talking about, but we were repeating the message that we heard from our spiritual masters and our seniors. And it had a tremendous effect.
Absolutely.
Okay, we carry on with the text 45. Okay, this is the form of the Lord which is meditated upon by the followers of the yoga process, and it is pleasing to the yogis in meditation. So those who are doing yoga, Ashtanga yoga, they meditate on the form of the Lord as Paramatma or Lord Vishnu. It is not imaginary but factual. So this
we omitted 44.
Okay, sorry. The Lord's beautiful face appeared to them like this. Thank you. The Lord's beautiful face appeared to them like the inside of a blue lotus. The Lord's beautiful face appeared to them like the inside of a blue lotus. So inside of a blue lotus. And the Lord's smile appeared to be blossoming jasmine flower. After seeing the face of the Lord, the sages were fully satisfied, and when they wanted to see him further, they looked upon the nails of his lotus feet. So introduction is done by looking at the Lord's lotus. They kind of immediately saw the Lord was coming. They saw him. They smelled his fragrance, and now they see his lotus face. And the lotus face appeared to be like the inside of a blue lotus. That was just a general, like when you go and see the deities, when you're a new devotee, you see the beautiful face of the deities, right? And you see all the decorations and everything around. You said, wow, this is so nice. But when you have a little bit more knowledge, you have more gyan, more knowledge, then what will you do when you take darshan of the Lord? You put your head down in humility, you lift yourself up from the Dandvat, and then you try to look at the lotus feet of the Lord, because that is actually a devotee. He takes darshan from the lotus feet of the Lord. So after seeing the face of the Lord, which was just normal because the Lord was coming, the sages were fully satisfied. And because of that level of satisfaction, and when they wanted to see him further, listen to this carefully. They looked upon the nails of his lotus feet, which resembled rubies. Thus they viewed the Lord's transcendental body again and again. And so they finally achieved meditation on the Lord's personal feature. When we take darshan from the Lord's lotus nails onwards to his ankles, to his ankle bells, and to his thighs, to his calves, and then to his thighs, and then to the beautiful girdle around his waist. Then we looked at his belly, and then we looked at his chest, and then we looked at all the decorations on the chest and his arms, and then his neck, and then his beautiful lotus face, and then his eyebrows, his head, and then his smile. And his smile. Oh Lord is smiling upon you. So then that's a perfect darshan. Okay. So now text 45. This is the form of the Lord which is meditated upon by the followers of the yoga process. And it is pleasing to the yogis in meditation. It is not imaginary but factual. So the Brahma is saying this is an actual form. The sages can see it before them. So when they're meditating, they're given instruction by the spiritual masters. The yogis actually meditate on the form of the Lord. And he's the same form that is situated within the heart as Paramatma. It is not imaginary but factual, as proved by great yogis. The Lord is full in 8 kinds of achievement, but for others, these achievements are not possible in full perfection. Okay, so someone can read the purport, please.
The success of the yoga process is very nicely described here. It is basically mentioned that the form of the Lord as 400 Narayan is the object of meditation for the followers of Yoga Marga. In the modern age, there are so many so-called yogis who do not target their meditation on the 400 Narayan form. Some of them try to meditate on something impersonal or void, but that's not approved by the great yogis who follow the standard method. The real Yoga Marga process is to control the senses, sit in a solitary and sanctified place and meditate on the 400 form of Narayan, decorated as described in this chapter, as he appeared before the 4 sages. This Narayan form is Krishna's expansion. Therefore, the Krishna consciousness movement, which is now spreading, is the real topmost process of yoga practice. Krishna consciousness is the highest yoga performance by trained devotional yogis. Despite all the allurements of yoga practice, the 8 kinds of yogic perfections are hardly achievable by the common mind. But here it is described that the Lord, who appeared before the 4 sages, is himself full of all 8 of those perfections. The highest Yoga Marga process is to concentrate the mind 24 hours a day on Krishna. This is called Krishna consciousness. The yoga system, as described in Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita, or as recommended in the Patanjali yoga process, is different from the nowadays practice after yoga, as is generally understood in the Western countries. Real yoga practice is to control the senses, and after such control is established, to concentrate the mind on the Narayan form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, Lord Krishna is the original personality of Godhead, and all the other Vishnu forms, with 4 hands decorated with conch, lotus, club, and wheel, are binary expansions of Krishna. In Bhagavad Gita, it is recommended that one should meditate upon the form of the Lord. To practice concentration of the mind, one has to sit with the head and the back in a straight line, and must practice in a secluded place, sanctified by a sacred atmosphere.
Okay, Hare Krishna. So Srila Prabhupada is here making a point to you, the yoga process, because of the description of the beautiful form of the Lord. He is saying that this actual form, this is not just an imaginary form in the heart of the devotee. That is a main essence of this part of the discussion in the purport, that the form that the devotee meditate on is not an imaginary form that you climb up to actually negate after a while. No, this form actually exists in the Vaikuntha, and the 4 Kumaras have a darshan of this. Okay, this is the highest darshan that you can get in the yoga. That's what actually Prabhupada is trying to impress upon here in this purport. So then in the next part of the purport, Prabhupada explained, I'm just paraphrasing it. Prabhupada explains the yogic process. He's starting the 8th the Ashtanga Yoga process, which is described also in the Bhagavad Gita. Prabhupada described in chapter 6, Dhyana Yoga. And then he explains to Arjuna, the yoga process. And Arjuna said, it is more difficult for me to control the wind than to control the mind, right? So in the 3rd part of the purport, Prabhupada talks about Lord Krishna having explained that to Arjuna, but he realized that it is difficult, right, to do that. And Prabhupada now decrying also the yoga that is generally performed is just gymnastics, right? But that proper yoga is samadhi, meditation on the actual form of the Lord, which is the real form, which is the 3rd part of the purport. Okay, so it's a long purport. I'm paraphrasing up to the 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I will read the 4th part here. Okay. So by meditation, one can understand God is seated within one's heart, even if one does not know it. God is seated with the heart of everyone. Not only he is seated in the heart of the human being, also in the hearts of cats and dogs. And this is explained in Bhagavad Gita. Ishvara sarva bhutanam hridesha arjuna tishtati. I'm seated in everyone's heart. From me comes, right? He said, no. Ishvara sarva bhutanam hridesha arjuna tishtati. Brahmaya sarva bhutanam yantarudrani mayaya. The Lord is seated in everyone's heart and is directing the wanderings of all living entities who are seated on a machine made of material energy. Okay? So that Prabhupada explains in the middle of the 4th part of this purport. The Ishvara, the supreme controller of the world, is seated in the heart of everyone. Not only he is in everyone's heart, but he is also present within the atom. So how is the Lord present in the atom? The essential principles of each substance is maintained by the Lord because they're created by him. So therefore, the functionality of copper, the functionality of iron, the functionality of wood, the functionality of air, the functionality of oxygen, the functionality of nitrogen, carbon, this and that, all the different elements. It is maintained as functioning in the properties that they have because the Lord is maintaining that order. So he is Akhilesha, he is Akhilatma. Essential qualities of all material ingredients are maintained by him, so that water acts like water, oxygen acts like oxygen, right? So the property is maintained and created and maintained by the Lord being present as Paramatma. So not that only he enters into all the living beings of the chara, of the walking and conscious beings, but even of the non-conscious entities, such as matter and everything. He is the essential principle by which everything is maintained. That's why he's called Vishnu, the maintainer. So he maintains the function of the human body. He maintains the function of the cat body. He maintains the function of the tree body, right? He enters each of them. But then how does the atom of oxygen act like oxygen, or behave, has a property of oxygen, more like the right word to use. It is because the Lord is there in every atom. He's there in every atom, and that's what he says here. So no place is vacant or devoid of the presence of the Lord. How can we reconcile that? He is present. As his energy, transformation of his energy, he is present, which is non-different than him. So that is a statement of Ishopanishad. God is present everywhere, and his right of proprietorship applies to everything because he is present everywhere. And the feature of the Lord by which he is present everywhere is called Paramatma. Atma means the individual soul, and Paramatma means the individual super soul. Atma means the individual soul, and Paramatma means the individual super soul. Both Atma and Paramatma, individual persons. The difference between Atma and Paramatma is that Atma, or the soul, is present only in a particular body, right? And Paramatma is present everywhere. In this connection, the example of the sun is very nice. The individual person may be situated in one place, but the sun, even though in a similar individual entity, is present on the head of every individual person. Like the sun is there, the sun planet, but the sun is present everywhere. So similarly, the Lord is present everywhere, right? So in Bhagavad Gita, this is explained. Therefore, even though the qualities of all living entities, including the Lord, are equal, the super soul is different from the individual soul by quantitative power of expansion. That is, the super soul can expand everywhere, but the individual soul cannot. It's limited to our kshetra, to our field of activities. The jiva is limited to this kshetra, to this field of activity. Paramatma is not limited to this field of activity. His whole field of activity is a whole world. And each individual localized. That's why it's called localized. Means that Brahman is everywhere in an impersonal feature. Paramatma is everywhere, but localized in each individual unit. That's why the word Prabhupada uses is localized form of the Supreme Lord, because it supervises and enables and gives properties to each unit. Like the body of a cat. The cat will act like a cat. And in the body of a human being, the human being will act like a human being, because he is supervising the functionality of each of the individual soul in the body that they are. So therefore, he is a supervisor of both the soul and Prakriti. Right? Very important, this Paramatma understanding. So now, so the next paragraph I'm starting to read is a person in full consciousness, Krishna consciousness. A person in full Krishna consciousness acts by the dictation of Krishna. In the beginning of Krishna consciousness, dictation is received through the transparent medium of spiritual master. When one is sufficiently trained and acts in submissive faith and love for Krishna, under the direction of the bona fide spiritual master, the dovetailing process becomes more firm and accurate. So, very profound statement. If we are trained properly in submissive faith, then the direction of the bona fide spiritual master, the dovetailing process becomes more firm and more accurate. More firm and more accurate, which means that we are more in tune with trying to dovetail our activities to Krishna, and we not hitting about here and there. The stage of devotional service by the devotee in Krishna consciousness is the most perfect stage of the yoga system. At this stage, Krishna or the super soul dictates from within, while from without the devotee is helped by the spiritual master, who is a bona fide representative of Krishna. From within, he helps the devotee as Chaitya, for he is seated with the heart, within the heart of everyone. Understanding that God is seated within everyone's heart is not, however, sufficient. One has to be acquainted with God, and from both within and without. And one has to take dictation from within and without to act in Krishna consciousness. So Prabhupada was writing this, being in America, and explaining this whole process because there was a movement of yoga in the US, and people were practicing yoga just to have a healthy body, to control their mind, or to act like they are being apart from the mainstream Western American culture. The Prabhupada is actually driving in this knowledge. And Prabhupada did say later on, we'll carry on reading more. So for a perfect yogi, there are 8 kinds of super achievements. And this is called the Ashta Siddhi. One can become lighter than the air, one can become smaller than the atom, and one can become bigger than a mountain. Right? You know, the Ashta Siddhi, Anima, Lagima, Mahima, Prakamya, Kama, Vasaita, etc., etc. These are the 8 kind of yogic powers that one can manifest. Right? So one can achieve whatever he desires, one can control like the cloud and so on. But one rises to the perfectional stage of receiving dictation from the Lord. That is greater than any stage of material achievement. So the yogic powers actually make us very powerful in the material world. But when one rises to higher perfection, then he enters into service and subordination of the Supreme Lord. The breathing exercise of the yoga system is generally practiced by, it's just the beginning. Meditation on the Super Soul is another step forward. But to obtain direct contact with the Super Soul and take dictation from him in the highest perfectional stage, right, that is even higher. So the breathing exercise of meditation practice were very difficult, even 5,000 years ago. Otherwise, Arjuna would not have rejected the proposal of Krishna and adopted this system, right? So let me go to the next paragraph. We know about this, is repetitive, but Prabhupada has put so much effort to this long purport. So now he says the largest number of Indians follow this yoga process. That's what I was saying in the beginning. And in the United States, it's gradually spreading in many cities. So because it was spreading in many cities, and there were Maharishi Mahesh Yogi and this Yogi and Yogananda and so on. So Prabhupada is writing very profusely to explain that this is not actually the goal of this yoga process, what they are teaching. The goal of the yoga process is to actually attain samadhi and understand the Supreme Lord Sri Vishnu within our heart. Okay? So let's read text 46. Then the Kumaras speak. I have 4 verses. We will end. We'll complete these 4 verses. Okay? 46. And Kumara Uchuhu. The Kumaras said, my dear Lord, our dear Lord, you are not manifested to rascals, even though you are seated within the heart of everyone. So the Lord is in the heart of everyone, but he's not manifested to the demons and to the rascals. But as far as we are concerned, we see you face to face. But you are unlimited because they have an understanding of Brahman being unlimited. Now they see him face to face. But as far as we are concerned, we see you face to face, although you are unlimited. The statements we have heard about you are from our Father. You see? Kamalaksha, you get that? The statements we have heard about you from our Father, Brahma, through the ears, have now been realized actually by your kind presence, right? So they've been hearing about this from Lord Brahma. Okay. So because of their desire to hear, they wanted to go and see the Lord. So they were already introduced to Bhakti in a sense by the hearing process from their father. And the eagerness to see the Lord was therefore not just Brahman. Otherwise, how would they go all the way up to? So you see, it's there, but you have to read it carefully. Right. Okay, so purport. The so-called yogis who concentrate their mind or meditate upon the impersonal or void or described. This verse of Srimad Bhagavatam describes persons who are expected to be very expert yogis engaged in meditation but who do not find the Supreme Personality of Godhead sitting within their heart. These persons are described as Duratma. So Prabhupada is actually, sending some rocks here to those who are actually pretending to be yogis, but they cannot see the Lord within the heart. So therefore they are Dhuratma, which means a person who has very crooked heart or a less intelligent person, just opposite to Mahatma, which means one who has a broad heart. A Mahatma is a broad-hearted person. Those so-called yogis who, although engage in meditation, are not broad-hearted, cannot find the four-handed Narayan form, even though he is seated within their heart. Although the first realization of the Supreme Absolute Truth is Brahman, one should not remain satisfied with experiencing the impersonal effulgence of the Supreme Lord, which was the main realization of the four Kumaras. Okay? Then you see, so once they have, it's interesting, when the Kumaras, they were mostly in Brahman, when they have meditation of the Lord, darshan of the Lord, then they have also Brahman realization, they have Paramatma realization, and they have Bhagavan realization, all free. So the devotee, he has understanding of Bhagavan, but by reading Shastra, we also get full understanding. We are not yogis. Yogis in the sense of Ashtanga yogis. The Ashtanga yogis will go on meditating on Paramatma. But because we accept the Lord of Vaikuntha being Paramatma in the heart, when he expands as Karanodakshai Mahavishnu and Shirodakshai Vishnu, we can also see him in as Paramatma within our heart. So we have Paramatma realization. And we also know that the impersonal energy from which everything, the Brahman realization comes is also an impersonal form of the Lord. So the Bhakta devotee, he has Bhagavan realization, Paramatma realization, and Brahman realization, right? But if a person is doing meditation, yoga, and he doesn't accept the personal form of the Lord, he will have nothing. He will have nothing in the end because he's not even aware of the form of the Lord as Paramatma within the heart. So Prabhupada is saying, those so-called yogis, although engaged in meditation, are not broad-hearted, cannot find the 400 Narayan form, even though he's seated within their heart. Although the first realization of the Supreme Absolute Truth is impersonal Brahman, one should not be satisfied, so we should seek forward. Okay? So the last paragraph in this text 46. Here are the four sages. Sanat Kumar, Sanatan, Sanandan, and Sanaka are described as actually sincere devotees. Although they had heard from their father Brahma about the personal feature of the Lord, only the impersonal feature Brahman was revealed to them. So they were not offensive. They were not Mayavadis, they were Brahmavadis. The Brahman realization was fully revealed to them because they were not attracted to anything in this material world. They were detached, they were austere, they were knowledgeable, and they were deeply involved in all kinds of austerities and penance. Right? Only the was revealed, but because they were sincerely searching for the Lord, they finally saw his personal feature directly, which corresponded with the description given by their father. So technically, we can conclude here that if someone is a good impersonalist, that is, he has proper Brahman realization, he can upgrade himself. And this is the verse 19, Bahunam Janmanam Ante Jnanavan, one who is a Jnani, Man Prapadyate, he surrenders to Krishna. So the mood of these four boys were actually, we want to go and see the Lord because our father has talked about us about him. So we want to see. And the desire was so sincere that when Jaya and Vijay stopped them, they said, we're supposed to have any dualities here because they were beyond duality. They said, why is he stopping us? We want to see the Lord. He's not supposed to be friends and enemies. We couldn't be causing trouble here because that was the mood of the Brahman realization. Everything is peaceful, everything is nice. And they were peaceful, they were nice, they saw no duality. They wanted to see the Lord. So when they were stopped by the four Kumaras, it was a little bit shocking for them. Now it all comes into a round circle perspective. So the thus became fully satisfied. Here, they expressed that gratitude because although they are foolish impersonalists in the beginning, by the grace of the Lord, they could now have the good fortune to see his personal features. Although another significant aspect of this verse is that the sages describe the experience of hearing from their father, Brahma, who was born of the Lord directly. In other words, there's a disciplic succession from the Lord to Brahma, and Brahma to Narada, and Narada to Vyasa, and so on. So they heard from their father. And then they founded their own sampradaya, right? Which is slightly different to Lord Brahma's sampradaya. So, because the Kumaras were sons of Brahma, they had the opportunity to learn the Vedic knowledge from the disciplic succession of Brahma. So because they were hearing in parampara, and they were actually incarnation of the Lord in a sense. You know, in the third canto it is explained. So any question on this? I think everything comes to, so when you hear stereotype classes, then it's unable, you know, about Brahman and how do they enter. But then you have to see the whole picture. And by studying scrutinizingly, then you don't have these overarching opinions on a topic without full understanding, right? So now you can answer. So we learned a lot of things. We learned about, they were Brahman realization, but they were not offensive. They were hearing from their father who was a pure devotee. They had a desire to see the Lord, so they walked to Vaikuntha, right? And we also see a beauty of the Lord being described, the qualities of the Lord being described, and so on and so forth. So we read the text 47. We know that you are the supreme absolute truth, the personality of God who manifests your transcendental form in the uncontaminated mode of pure goodness. This transcendental eternal form of your personality can be understood only by your mercy. Although unflinching devotional service by great sages whose hearts have been purified in the devotional way. So now they're explaining that, you know, not possible to understand you who are beyond the modes without the mercy of great souls, or by your mercy and through devotional service. Okay, text 48. Persons who are very expert and most intelligent in understanding things as they are, engage in hearing narrations. So they're glorifying. So these 46, 47, 48, 49, and 50. Kumaras offer prayers to the Lord. These are beautiful prayers to the Lord. Okay, so 48. Persons who are very expert and most intelligent in understanding things as they are. They engage in hearing narrations of the auspicious activities and pastimes of the Lord, which are worth chanting and worth hearing, which was their experience with their father. Such persons do not care even for the highest material benediction, namely liberation, to say nothing about the less important benediction, like the material happiness of the heavenly kingdom. So they became devotees of the Lord, completely transformed. So I'll read the two verses and we'll stop. O Lord, we pray that you let us be born in any hellish condition of life, just as long as our hearts and minds always engage in service of your lotus feet. So they are speaking so nicely to Lord Vishnu, directly to Lord Vishnu. Now, why is this text 49 interesting? Because they realize that they may have done some mistake by trying to curse two devotees of the Lord engaged in his service as doorkeepers. So they are kind of now in a humble mood. They're saying that even if we are born in hellish conditions, our mind will be engaged in your service. That's number one. And the two, they say that the words speak about you, and that they use their words to speak about the Lord and hear about him, even in hell. So they're saying that bhakti is preferable to impersonal liberation. So I'm reaching the end of my energy, so I will go to text 50. O Lord, we therefore offer our respectful obeisances unto your eternal form as the supreme personality of Godhead, which you have so kindly manifested before us. Your supreme eternal form cannot be seen by unfortunate, less intelligent persons, but we are so much satisfied in our mind and vision to see you. So they're appreciating that the Lord has given the darshan, has actually given them darshan, and they're so happy to see him. So they are very much in this prayerful mood to the Supreme Lord, Vishnu, who is in front of them, who has given them darshan after this mishap with Jai and Vijay. So this is the end of the chapter 15. So any last questions we can take, or we can stop here?
Prabhuji, Krishna.
Yes, Prabhu.
Yeah, from the narrations, we understand that the yogis meditate on the Paramatma. And then we devotees, we are chanting. So during the course of the devotees chanting, where do we station the mind? We read the mind over the activities of Krishna, or we just fix a particular pastime of the Lord and we fix our mind on it?
See, the manifestations of the Lord in the form of the holy name is not different than the Lord. So we just hear the process of sadhana, Vaidhi Bhakti, is to hear the chanting of the mantra. By hearing the mantra, then we actually purify ourselves a lot more. So by constantly hearing, and if you have the deity of the Lord, the personal form of the Lord you're attracted, then you try to keep that in your mind. But generally the mind can either be concentrating on a form or concentrating on the sound. It cannot do both simultaneously. So we concentrate on the sound, and sometimes to bring our mind together, we try to think about the beauty of the Lord. But whichever form is attractive to you, everyone is a very much an individual in terms of the devotion. You may be attracted to a particular form of the deity of the Lord, and you may be attracted to, this is called your Aradhya, your worshipable Lord, or your Ishtadev. Then you can meditate on that form of the Lord. But later on, you will see in explanations of Lord Kapila Dev in text 29, that a devotee who's really well trained and intelligent, he will at the same time see that the Lord is present in everyone's heart and also in his heart. So later on, when Lord Kapila Dev explains Sankhya and explains also the process of Astanga to Devahuti, then we will also come back to this subject again, that we have to understand that Paramatma is present within everyone's heart. So understanding that Paramatma is present in everyone's heart is a very essential part of being a devotee. And Lord Kapila Dev, when he explains Devahuti, later on we will read that, and explains that if someone is doing deity worship and is unable to respect other devotees and respect other people, for example, it's because he has no understanding that the Lord he's worshipping on the altar is also present in everyone's heart as Paramatma. And he said, if someone doesn't understand that, then his worship is like cheap imitation. So there's a lot more to understand about this Paramatma, even as devotees. That's why Prabhupada is writing so much about him. It's not that he's writing to the yogis, he's writing to us. He meant for us to study the books. So all these things will come out in this third canto. A lot of information on this topic will come out. Hare Krishna. Kamalaksha Prabhu, you wanted to say something? And last question? No?
No.
Last question. Last question, Prabhu.
Okay, Madhuban.
My comment. The four Kumaras, they regretted that they caused the Jaya Vijaya, engagement, because they were devotees. They are not supposed to be angry. So I think they feel removed when they saw Krishna or Lord Vishnu.
That was explained. I think you were a bit late in the class yesterday, and that yesterday we discussed that the anger was justified because they were stopped from actually going to see their Lord. In a way, it was justified because it's like stopping their service. They wanted to, they were enthusiastic, they were innocent young children, they wanted to see the Lord. So in one sense, it was justified because the anger was justified because the doorkeepers were stopping their service or the darshan of the Lord.
But they still regretted it when they saw Krishna, when Vishnu appeared.
Yeah, because the actions were a little bit,
Angry.
discordant.
Yes, it is anger.
Yeah. Yeah, but this is also, you will see later on, this is all just arrangement of the Lord. When they see Krishna, even before they saw the Lord, they were actually repentant. They were repentant because they realized that we have done something that's not very nice. They are devotees of the Lord. And why they also became repentant? Because the two doorkeepers were repentant. Because the actual stopping was done by the doorkeepers. So because the two doorkeepers were very repentant and they were immediately humbled, then actually the Kumaras realized, oh my goodness, we have insulted two nice devotees of the Lord. So this is a borderline case. This is understanding. So there is nuances from both sides. Because why is it borderline case? Because they were almost Shanta Bhaktas, now becoming full-fledged devotees of the Lord. And therefore, there may be some mishaps in understanding. Okay, Grantaraja Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Shishini Jai Gautama. Hari Hari Bol.
So now let us all loudly chant Hare Krishna mantra to appreciate Prabhu for his class. And
Hare Krishna, Krishna
Hare
Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Krishna
Hare
Krishna,
Rama,
Hare
Hare
Hare,
Rama,
Hare
Rama,
Rama,
Hare
Hare
Rama.
Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Panchakapataru Vyasya Kripasim
Vasindhu
Patitanam
Vaivachapatitanam
Pavanebhyo
Pavanebhyo
Antakoti
Vaishnavibhyo
Vaishnava Bole Ki Jai, Nitai Gora Pimenande.
Hare
Hare
Hare.
Hare Bo.
All glory is His grace, Advaita Krishna.